Okay, I'm going on mute.
Thank you, John. Again, I'm assuming we are on live since John went mute. And we'll call to order the Rules Committee. It is 1:30. And the Council Committee is present with Mr. Fred Richardson and Ms. Bess Rich and myself as the chair. Also in attendance is by Zoom, of course, is Mr. Manzi, our president, Ms. Gina Gregory, and Mr. Joel Davis. I am not, I don't think I'm missing anybody. I'm looking. So, Madam Clerk, if you see somebody join, I'll add them to it.
Okay.
I'd like to.
Gregory and Frank Taylor is our attorney, in for Chris Arledge.
Okay, and Frank, we appreciate you attending. We know that Chris has got some other things today. Hopefully, he'll be able to come back and join us for the police. I think that is correct. That was at least sounded like this morning when we talk about the police advisory this afternoon. Immediately following this meeting, we'll go straight into it. It'll just simply, I will step down as the chair and Fred will step in and we'll just keep on going for the police advisory. Today's Rules Committee meeting has been called with concerns about participation in the council meeting and the efficiency of that meeting. And I have three things in mind. One is agenda items, the number of items a person might address on a given council meeting, and the number of minutes per item that a guest would address, an agenda item. I am personally interested in considering the limit of council members' discussion with regard to the same. And I will talk about that later on. But in further laying out the meeting, we also need to talk about non-agenda items, whether or not agenda and non-agenda need to be different. They are treated so much differently across the United States. Some exactly the same, straight up time. This is it. It's all you can do. But with non-agenda items, we really need to look at how long someone speaks, how many times a month, the number of subjects one can speak to, and what prior notice is necessary. And with that, I'd like to do as we always like to do, is let the council members, council committee members speak first, and then those that are in attendance that wish to speak, and we'll have some further comment. Fred or Bess?
Fred's muted.
Is Fred talking? He can go first.
Yes, am I muted?
Fred, please.
Okay. I have absolutely no interest in trying to limit the time that council members speak. This is the purpose of this. The form of government we have is where we debate issues to reach consensus. The public, that's not their purpose. They come and address us about issues that's concerned to them. We have a number of agenda items before us that we have to reach consensus on, because if we can't get 5 votes, it's dead. And we have to debate those issues sometime. Sometimes we go right through it and don't have to have anything to say. But sometimes we have to take the time and debate the issues. We all are not the same. We all don't see it the same way. But when we finish, hopefully we will agree on a path to take. So I don't think we ought to. I am against trying to censor council members, saying just like we have a time limit on the public, we have a time. We're not here for the same purpose. Our purpose for being here is not the same. They are visiting the meeting. We are transacting the city's business. We have to do what we need to get the city business done. And
Right.
I'm not for coming to the table trying to tie anybody's hands and getting the city business done. I haven't heard one word from the public saying that you all talk too long.
All right, considering agenda items and non-agenda items, what would be your position?
I would like to
Before you
weigh,
go
I'd like
forward-
to weigh in
But
too.
you want to, Gina, are you about to say you would like to stay with council member limits first?
No, I
Yeah,
just want
yeah.
y'all to speak up. I can't hear.
Wow.
Okay.
need to
Get
turn
closer
up-
to your microphone or something.
I can
I
hear,
just can't hear everybody.
I can hear everybody. So
Me too.
you got
I
volume?
can't.
Turn your
Well, you just-
volume up, then.
Okay.
I've tried.
We also have our Vice President, Mr. Small, joining us, just for the record. All right, Bess?
Thank you, thank you. Are we concentrating on talking about council members being
Yeah, why
limited
don't we
in?
stay with the one? That's a good idea.
Okay,
And,
I'd like to weigh in on that. Do I have feedback? Do you have that from me?
No.
Okay. All right. I tend to think in the lines of Councilman Richardson in that we are conducting the business and the time that it takes to get your points across. I'm not sure we can, set that at a limit necessarily, although I think it's being polite not to overstay your limit at any point because we do have a lot to conduct. But I'm not sure I would like to see that as a rule per se. And that's where I'll leave it at that. I don't know what time frame you were talking about, just that you want some kind of, if I'm reading you correctly, as chair, as far as limiting the amount of time. So I don't know whether you were talking about 20-minute, whatever, but I think we've been mostly polite to each other and, used our time appropriately when we were trying to get our points across. And it is our business, and it's not our business, it's the community's business. So it's important that we make all our points that we need to and not limit that kind of back and forth dialogue.
Right.
Thanks.
Anybody else want to speak to that? That specific subject? Joel, are you raising your hand? Yeah.
I would just say that while I agree, while I support time limits in principle, I'm not sure how you do it on a practical basis. Because we have multiple items that come up every week, and we have back and forth between ourselves and other speakers. I don't know how you would implement something like that.
Okay. CJ or Levon? Gina, I'm sorry. I saw your hand up.
Yeah. Hey, I agree with what Joel said. I don't see a practical way for us to limit when we are in debate. Now, there might be something we could discuss when someone from the public comes to speak to us for 5 minutes, and yet we go on and on and on in response to them. Now, that might be something that we can discuss, limiting our response time, because we have certainly been criticized for that. But as far as debate, open debate, no, I don't think there's a way for us to limit that, nor should we.
Anyone else?
John,
Yeah, give me 1 second. I'll come back to you, Fred. I thought I saw
Okay.
CJ unmute his screen, so I'm assuming that's the indication he wants to speak.
Yeah, good afternoon, everybody. Sorry about my tardiness, but we have to remember that this is a council meeting. Basis, 7 council members, and basis, we are here to represent the public, not for our own agenda. Now we're up here talking about stuff our own agenda for our own shine. That's something different. But most of the times, I can say that most council members do speak on what's important, of the city business. But again, it's a city council meeting. We all are city council members. And so therefore, we should just have a rod. Sometimes it might take 2 minutes to bring out something. Sometimes it might take 7 minutes to bring out something. But as long as deal with city business, I believe that we should not be limited at all. Thanks.
Okay. All right. I'm looking at Levon's, he's still muted. Levon?
Yes, sir, I'm here, Mr. Chair. And I would concur with what I've been hearing from the majority of the council members. I would be very reluctant to want to adopt any rule that would prohibit me from being able to fully advocate for either my constituency and or a position that I might want to take. You know, it might take me 3 minutes to get my point over, or it might take me 30 minutes to get my point over. And if it's something that I feel passionate about, then I wouldn't want to be in the middle of trying to get my explanation over and then have somebody tell me, well, you know, your time's up. The beeper is on you, shut it down. And so I agree with Councilwoman Gregory. I think we elapse a lot of time in the back and forth between speakers. You know, we'll have a speaker get up and ask us a question, knowing full well we can't give the answer. Or we'll have a speaker get up and make a statement, and then we spend, 5 minutes listening to the speaker, 10 minutes in rebuttal. It may be right in there that we could tighten things up. But if there's an agenda item and we call for discussion, if Bess has 20 minutes worth of discussion, I need to grin and bear it. Put on AL.com, lanyardmobile.com, and ride on through. Because that's what the people would have sent her down here to do. So I think I see what you're saying. I don't know how we can do it and still be as effective, but I think there's an opportunity with the banter back and forth with speakers to kind of cut that down.
Right. And I think that's where I was going with it. Fred, back to Fred.
Yeah, I just wanted to say that if you compare the Mobile City Council with city council across this country, you will find we are among the few who are not bogged down in bickering with each other. We have a great council. It's no animosity among the council. We all have a relationship with each other. These councils that's limiting the other council members to 2 minutes and 3 minutes, these are councils that's bickering and fighting and fussing, and they decide they need to do that so the public wouldn't look bad in the public. We are not doing that. We are actually debating the city's business. But if we was up arguing and fussing with each other, I would say, cut the time down. We're not doing that. That's not who we are. We are setting the standard for other city councils across this nation, and I wouldn't change.
Understand. If I may, I like where Ms. Gregory went, and that's really the only problem that I've ever had is when we tell a guy to sit down and almost kick him out because he won't sit down, and then we speak for 3 times the amount of time that he had allocated or she had allocated. And what I'm trying to do with just introducing it was maybe say, let's hold it till our announcements, or let's say that when it's public speaking time, unless they ask a specific question that we have a specific answer to, that we limit ourselves to the discussion on agenda items or during our announcement. And that's just Robert's Rules of Order essentially applied. Mr. President, you give me some funny looks.
No, that's just, no, I'm listening. Please don't read into that, because I agree with you, Mr. Chair. As I've had the opportunity to preside over meetings, one of the most personally frustrating things is when a person will get up and they've got a litany of questions, and then they expect an answer. The answer is not pertinent to our role or responsibilities. So we just kind of in a quagmire. I see exactly what you're saying. Pardon my look. That's not intentional.
But that would be, we would stay on the rules that way. We would say it is not in accordance with our rules to respond at this time.
Right.
The administration or the council will respond to you as time permits, and just move on.
Hey, John.
Yes, ma'am.
You know,
Gina.
we've talked about this for a long time. When people come to speak to the council, we have asked for specific questions if they are non-agenda items. You know, we can't be expected off the tops of our heads to answer some of the things they're asking us about, even on agenda items. You know, I hate for us to sit there and look like we don't know what's going on or send it out to the administration. So we need to kind of work out when somebody has specific questions about the agenda, we need to know ahead of time which items on the agenda they have questions about, and not just, he has a question about agenda item number 06777. What is the question about item 07677, whatever? So that either we can answer to it or the administration can answer to it, or if it's something that somebody has to get back to them, then, you know, Levon can handle it. The other thing is, if somebody comes to a council meeting to criticize and complain about something specific regarding the council or something, some ordinance we have passed, something along those lines, or the administration, I think in that respect, Levon and or the mayor should have an opportunity to respond, but not ad nauseum.
Right. And that's a good segue, I think, into, Joel, I did see your finger. Sorry, go ahead.
I just want to join in agreement. I think in this discussion, this whole discussion we're having about speaking at city council meetings, we need to go back to the reason, why do we have the meetings? And we have the meetings to transact the city's business.
Right.
Now, we have decided, and I think it's entirely appropriate, that we're going to provide some time for people to speak to us in that forum. But that doesn't mean that it is that doesn't mean that we're giving people a podium to, a Hyde Park podium where they can stand on the soapbox and dissertate for periods on their own initiative. It's not really a Q&A period. That's not an appropriate forum for us to answer questions that are posed to us. We're conducting the city's business. We need to be available to listen to people who have anything, comment on an agenda item, a complaint about something that's going on in the city. But this situation we're in now, where people come in and get on their own soapbox, come in with a list of 50 questions, none of which we have the immediate answer to. I don't think we need any of that. To my mind, we provide a period of time when people can come in and speak. And that's
Right.
it.
Mr. Chairman,
Fred.
I think we need to take Gina's issue up as an amendment to our ordinance, that if a person's going to want to speak to us, they can come and speak. But if they have questions, submit their questions in advance. Then we'll be prepared to answer them. If they come in with questions, submit the questions in advance. Other than that, you can speak. You got 5 minutes to speak and you can be seated. But if you want to speak and get asked questions, submit your questions along with when you request to speak. And then if you didn't submit your question, then all you can do is speak.
But Fred, we don't need to provide the answers to those questions at the meeting. You can submit your questions. The answers can be provided by whoever the responsible party is. But we don't need to get in there and get 40 questions and provide 40 answers during a business session of the council.
I don't disagree, but we can figure out how we're going to do that.
Well, we might be able to
Most
just.
of the questions would deal with the administration in the first place.
Right,
Yeah.
and we can't answer
Right.
them. And there's no
Let's,
reason to try to answer them in the city council meeting.
Yeah, one at a time now, one at a time. I think we're there on that.
No,
Really
I
what
would like
we did a kind of a segue into non-agenda.
Can we
all agree to
just
that?
back up as a committee member? Can I weigh in on, because I wasn't there initially with, when I just heard about limiting council. Now we've moved on to saying it's,
Yeah, I think I just wanted to announce that, yeah.
okay, well, and I appreciate that because that's what committee meetings are all about. I know that people can sign in they do not have to tell us ahead of time when it's an agenda item. So I think we're talking about two different speakers that right now, I'll use the old, if these are the rules, 5 minutes, whether it's an agenda item or whether they've signed in ahead of time. The sign in ahead of time, they should definitely tell us whatever questions they have. I mean, that's why I would hope the administration looks at our business meetings so that they can have the proper people present, or at pre-conference, we often say, will there be someone, when we know there's a speaker and we get that confirmation. But as far as someone signing in ahead of time, I don't know how they get us their questions. What it is how do we respond, as far as, do we just delegate to our president to then kind of make sure the questions are well understood and who they might be given to if they can't be answered right there, or call on a staff member who is present. So again, we can tighten this up, and I am in on doing that because it is a business meeting. And but I think there's, again, the limitations, that trouble me from the get-go, but I see where everyone's going. And so we want to make this work.
Yeah, let's focus
So
on just non-agenda, and I think it'll help us all clue in, because I think if a guy comes in on a non-agenda item, our rules already say they've got to submit
Yes.
their subject matter. And I want to limit that to a subject matter. That way that person is prepared, we're prepared, and it doesn't turn into how fast can you talk about 6 items. This way that we have efficient and effective use of our time.
This is for someone who signed in ahead of time. Correct?
Non-agenda item, that's correct. Yes.
Okay. Thank you.
Joel first. Joel.
I'm not a member of the committee, so you can put me behind Fred and Bess whenever you want to.
Fred's listening. Yeah.
But on non-agenda speakers, I think we ought to limit the number of times during a month you can speak to the council on a non-agenda item. To once or twice a month. I see you holding up to twice a month is fine. And I want, so if you ought to only be able to speak on a non-agenda item twice a month, I don't think, John, I don't care much about how many items you bring up, as long as you stick to the time period. I would say if we limit, we ought to do one of two things. Either we ought to limit the number of times a month you can speak on a non-agenda item, or we ought to cut back on the time that you have to speak on a non-agenda item. Well, one or the other, I guess, maybe both. I don't know, but we ought to cut back on that. That's my, and the other, and just go back to what I said earlier. I don't think we should try to answer questions at city council meeting, because what we have had happen is we have had people come in and they got a list of questions this long, and we run through those questions. And if we try to answer all those questions at the city council meeting, we won't be able to get our business done. So I just don't see the city council as a place to answer questions. You're happy to pose questions. You can pose all the questions you want to. And the clerk will try to send them to the appropriate person or something like that. But the council meeting is not the place to answer questions.
Agree. Gina, and then Fred.
Okay, 2 things on what Joel just said. If somebody has questions about agenda items, we're going to need to get them in the thought process of, we lay things over for a week. So if something comes up on the agenda for the first time, then they've got that other week to get their questions answered, rather than coming to us the day we're supposed to vote on it and asking questions about it. So if we can get people in that mode of thinking, then they should be able to send their questions in about a first read and get them answered prior to the time that we vote, which would maybe help keep them from needing to come to a council meeting then to ask these questions. On
We're
non-agenda,
talking about non-agenda items.
Non-agenda.
I was talking about agenda items. I'm going to
Let's-
non-agenda next.
Yeah, we'll
on-
stay
on-
on agenda.
I thought I was clear, sorry. On non-agenda, years ago, when the agenda came out and there were people signed in to speak about certain things, if it was something the administration was handling, a lot of times what somebody within the administration would do is call that person and try to resolve the issue before they came down to city council to basically put it all out there in public. You know, a lot of times they just need to get a problem resolved and someone could take care of that before it ever comes down to us. You know, it's just something that's happened before that could be looked at again as a way to resolve some of these for, you know, and people wouldn't necessarily have to come to a city council meeting in order to get their issue resolved.
Right. Okay, Fred?
Okay, I don't think we're gonna gain much by limiting the number of times a speaker can speak on non-agenda items, because all they're gonna do is cite some agenda item and keep going. I think if we cut the time from 5 minutes to 3 minutes, I think we'll make some progress that way. But I don't think we're gonna make any progress by saying that you can only have speak twice, speak every other week on non-agenda items. I don't think they can still come the same amount of time, and they just gonna pick an agenda item because they're there for a purpose, and they'll figure out a way to accomplish that purpose. But if we set the time to 3 minutes, I think we'll make some progress.
Okay. Levon?
Well, I concur. I think as we turn the pages of our calendar and get closer and closer to next year, we're gonna have more and more Shinites who coming down in order to illuminate their positions and to increase their political standings. And that's just the nature of the way things will work. We're gonna have Shinites. Shine on me. It's the old Baptist hymn we sing. And that's what they're coming down for, to get some shine. And so if it's constructive and productive and something that's gonna help us understand and appreciate sentiments of people in our communities, I'm all for it. But some instances I noticed there is no constructive nature, no productive nature. And so I would be in favor of either modifying the number of times or modifying the quantity of time so that we might have more efficient meetings. Thank you, Mr. Chair.
Others? Yes, Gina?
Are you looking at limiting the time on both non-agenda and agenda, making it the
Yeah.
same?
I think we need to be consistent, in my personal opinion, but Chris weighed in with regard to time limits. Frank, are you familiar with any limitation we have?
The only limitation is it's got to be content neutral and reasonable as to time, place, and manner of speech. Other than that, it's pretty discretionary.
Well, those other ordinances we saw, there were a lot of them that had shorter time periods than what we.
Yeah,
Oh, yeah,
yeah.
yeah,
You know, I think.
3 minutes was common. Yeah.
yeah.
I think if-
3
I think
minutes is
if we're-
common.
My personal opinion would be is if we're not going to limit the number of times a month you can come speak to the council, and I think that's difficult to do on agenda items. I understand that that would be difficult to do on agenda items. Then we probably ought to cut back on the time you can speak on, but either an agenda or non-agenda item.
Right.
I like Fred's three minutes. If we join that with what we've been talking about in terms of, you know, we're not going to answer questions and we're not going to get in this back and forth. I think that would cut way back on the time we spend on this.
If I could weigh in?
Be lost to anybody in terms of the ability to speak to us.
Right,
If-
Bess?
Thank you very much. I know there's a clause in our current rules that the council can vote to extend somebody's speaking time. And I recommend that we keep that in place. I hear everybody with, you know, getting shorter duration of someone addressing us, but sometimes, you know, it might be too short. We might want to hear more from that particular side of the aisle, so to speak. So I'm thinking that as long as we write that, keep that in our rules, that we have that discretion, that one of us could recommend that the speaker be granted more time. And then if the council, it would take 5, like any of our legislative acts, to allow that person to have an additional 2 minutes or whatever that council person was advocating for. So I sort of like that in there. And that way it still gives you that kind of parameter that's still part of your rules. Thanks.
Mr. President,
Yeah, Fred.
also the council president can allow more time. And if the council is supposed to, just take 5 votes to override the council president.
Right.
He always can give them more time if he feels like.
Yeah, no, I'm good.
Yeah, Gina?
Going back to answering questions, if somebody does come to speak, it would primarily be a non-agenda item, more than likely that they might have some sort of criticism that would be aimed at the council or the administration. In that regard, are we not going to answer anything, respond to anything, say thank you, have a seat? How is that going to be handled?
That's why I think it's best to write it in. It says that we will not respond.
Right.
We can always make exceptions on extreme situations, but we could simply say it is not in accordance with the rules for us to have dialogue and answer questions and or address non-agenda items in this period of our agenda. And then we move on.
I agree with John. I think we if you either gotta allow it completely or not allow it. Those are your 2 choices. And what we got now is not working real well. And I would support. I'm with John on this. I think we just they came to speak to us. We're going to give them a forum and some time to speak to us, and then we hear you.
Then we go into parliamentary procedure.
Right.
But John, if a person comes down and makes some outlandish statement regarding a council member, inferring that they're lacking their responsibilities, and we sit up there and let them leave, it's an indication that we are guilty. I don't think that'll work. I mean, if they just generally talking about agenda item, that's fine. But if they make a statement that would indicate that any of us are derelict in our responsibilities,
They can't do that
and
anymore.
we say, oh, okay, then thank you. You should have a good day. Then the public will say, well, they just nailed him or her.
But I don't think they
I
can.
don't think we're gonna have no choice.
That's up to the president. That's up to the president to gavel that down.
Or to allow
No.
for the council person that was
Right.
noted to be able to address it.
Ain't no
And
doubt
as long
about
as
it.
that discretion is there, and I hear that it is, but it might need to be written in so it's extremely clear, that's how you get around any of that kind of theatrics, so to speak.
I think for council members to say, Mr. President, can I speak? I don't think the president's gonna say no. I don't believe that. I don't believe he's gonna do that.
But as a general rule, we do not respond to questions during this period of the agenda.
Oh, no, not questions.
Because-
Oh, I'm not talking about questions, John. I agree with that. But I'm saying, but if
That
they make
allows
a
that dialogue
statement,
not to happen based on rule.
You're just talking about a personal attack, Fred.
yeah, somebody come in and lodge something, and I think for any of us just to sit up there, and, then the public gonna say, well, that person was just nailed. Boy, they nailed that council member. We need to speak up and say that is not true.
Understand? Okay. Non-agenda, 3 minutes. That's what I'm hearing. It's very popular across the states. Let's realize that to read a double-spaced speech, 1 page takes 2.5 minutes. A full double-spaced typed speech takes 2.5 minutes to read. That's a general.
Yeah, we're talking about,
That's long enough.
we're talking about 3 minutes for both agenda
Yeah.
and non-agenda.
That's right.
That's correct.
So
Be
John, you want to
prepared
take
when
a
you come.
vote? Take a vote on the 3 minutes.
That's what I'm asking right now. As far as I'm concerned, I'm in for 3 minutes.
I'm in for 3 minutes. Two of us.
Unmute to weigh in. Um, Yes, I'm okay with it. I think when we first maybe switch over to it, we could be a little bit courteous to speakers who have for years, since 1985, I think it's been the 5 minutes, but we'll cross that bridge. And if we get the word out, then people should be able to be prepared. And again, as long as there's discretion to allow them, if possible, that I would still like to see that as part of, definitely part of the rules, how we go about giving them that discretion.
Yeah. And Frank, I'd like to see maybe possibly that we do 3 minutes as a rule, 1 minute at the request of any council member extension, and an additional extension on the vote of the council. Does that fit well with everyone?
Just be careful of the First Amendment. Make sure you're not granting an extension for somebody who wants to talk about something controversial and extend it on something else. But yeah, generally it's fine.
I hadn't thought about it like that. Of course, we could always be accused of that. All right, agenda items. I hear 3 minutes again, but we're just on agenda items here now, so we can be different, but I'm listening.
I think we treat it the same way as non-agenda.
They can adjust 3, 4, 5 agenda items if they can slam it into 3 minutes.
I don't care how many they talk about, as long as they do it in 3 minutes.
Yeah.
I think we should be consistent with it being for non-agenda or agenda. So I say, make them the same, because if not, people will say, well, I thought I had, whatever. Just make it the same. I recommend that.
Okay, I've kind of heard what I came to hear, and I think what the Rules Committee had intended to address. Is there something we're leaving out, or desires of another committee member to talk about something else with regard to rules? So what we heard was basically no limit of council members, but to limit unofficially the dialogue during that time, maybe with a one comment in the rules that say that as a matter of rule, we do not answer questions or enter dialogue during this portion of the agenda. And that's when they come to, what is that called? What portion of the agenda is that? The
Public comment.
Petitions and
Yes.
other communications to the council, is that right?
other than, yeah, that's right. That's right. So other communications section. And in both cases, non-agenda and agenda, we have a 3 minute limit, a new 3 minute limit.
And can I ask if we're going to also let people know when's the deadline for getting this information to the clerk? And we have different deadlines for Zoom meetings, and I know that's temporary. But do we want to also put that into the rules that this is the timeline for getting things in, so that it's part of the rules per se that everyone follows?
Oh,
You know,
absolutely.
Yeah,
I
okay.
just think we ought to make it Thursday at noon for non-agenda, because that's got to get on the agenda. But I think there needs to be some kind of sign in for agenda items too. But I don't think we're going to
Well,
get.
they do that at the meeting itself.
Yeah.
With a Zoom meeting, they have to get it in by Monday. And I guess that shouldn't necessarily be written into the rules, but I do think we should make sure that people understand what their obligations are in order to be able to do exactly what they want to do with addressing us.
24 hours in advance, I would think it would, instead of saying Monday, Tuesday, just say remote or Zoom meetings require 24-hour notice to the city clerk's office.
For agenda items,
For agenda items, that's correct.
right? And non-agenda would still be the 12 and noon by Thursday,
Mhm.
prior to the next Tuesday meeting. Okay.
that noon by Thursday? Is that in the rules now?
Yes.
Yeah, we have to make
That's
that
about
very
two.
clear.
It's, it's 2 o'clock, it's 2 o'clock now on Thursday, that you have to sign in for non-agenda items.
Let's see, it was
For-
noon. Okay.
Right, right. But do you think that noon would be better so that the packet could contain and you don't have to wait on that timeline to get us the 4 o'clock package or 3 o'clock package of our draft?
I mean, when you get the draft, it's, still gonna be the same because it's 12 o'clock for the, departments to submit their agenda item. 2 o'clock for the departments to submit their agenda item.
Okay, so we can leave the public in the same position. Okay, I didn't know if it would be more helpful to the clerk's office. Okay,
Yeah. But, in terms of agenda items, I still think that, they should submit that to us by, Monday, because the agenda is published on Friday to the public. So on Monday by, noon, 12 o'clock Monday, they should have, submitted any items that they want to address that are on the agenda.
Right.
and in other words, instead of coming down to the meeting on Tuesday and being able to just sign in at the door to be called, you want that Monday to be called up to the podium for an agenda item, correct?
Yeah, for agenda items, 12 o'clock on Monday. If it's, for the, Zoom meeting.
Let's hold on to that. Let's
And
just,
for-
No,
hey, how about, let me grab back here a little bit. Remote meetings, Zoom or other medias,
oh yeah,
24-hour notice is required. And then that way, it's not a Monday or a Tuesday, or it's all meetings that are done remotely, that if you want to address an item on that meeting's agenda, you have to give 24-hour notice to the clerk's office. Can we agree to that?
Up until 1 o'clock on Monday, or 3 o'clock on Monday.
It would be 24-hour notice
10:30 on Monday.
would equate to 10:30 on Monday morning.
what about for committee meetings that are
And
Zoom?
it would just be whatever that hour was.
That whatever that hour is. Okay, so, but let's go back to, we were only talking about Zoom having the 24-hour or
Correct.
for agenda items, but everyone's still comfortable with someone coming to the council meeting and signing in and being called to the podium.
3 minutes, absolutely.
Okay, all right. That's
Just for
good.
remote, just for remote.
Okay, thank you. And good.
So for another quick summary, we got some kind of comment that we'll all agree to. I'll pass it around with regards to no dialogue as a general rule, no dialogue during the other communications to the council section of the agenda. That we have 3 minutes instead of 5 for both non-agenda and agenda items. And no other rule changes with those regards, except for remote meetings requiring 24 hours notice of intent to speak. Okay, all right, I'll make note of that, and hopefully the clerk has it too, and we'll pass that around. And Frank, if you could let Chris know, we're just gonna need some language on how to implement those.
Sure.
Thank you. Any other comments by committee members or other council members?
I just want to have a question, John. So is everybody at no dialogue, comment and sign? That's consistent, everybody?
You're breaking up just a little bit, CJ. I'm sorry, I didn't.
Oh, I'm sorry. Now,
It's still a little broken.
I way out.
he's gone. He back.
Well,
You're back.
Frozen now. He's frozen
yeah,
now.
I'll call CJ.
Yeah, just call him back.
Yeah, I way out.
All right. All right. Thank you very much. This concludes the meeting or the items that we were supposed to cover. Do we have a motion to, for recommendation based on the 3 items that I spoke to? In summary.
Thank you, Mr. Chair.
All right.
Meeting, thank you, John.
Thank you. And we'll go into Fred's meeting. It's adjourned.
All righty. Okay, so
Close my
we
door.
would immediately convene the Public Safety Committee meeting. And we had hoped to start it at 2, but it's about 2:16, 2:17 on August the 18th. I am the chair, Fred Richardson, and council members, Gina Gregory and John Williams. And we
I'm here.
also, yes, we got a
Okay.
full quorum here. And we have our council president with us, Levon Manager, Joa Daves. What is best, I see her spot. She's here because her spot, she just walked away. And hopefully, Councilmember Small will come back to his spot is still sitting there. Yeah, he's here. Yay! Councilman Small is here. So I think we're gonna have a full complement today. We're here to look at the ordinance, an ordinance to create and establish the Police Citizens Committee Relations Advisory Council. We're looking at possibly amending that ordinance. We have, let me also say, we have present with us our city clerk, Lisa Lambert. We have our attorney, Frank Taylor, with us. If we have any members of the administration out there, would you please announce yourself? I don't hear any. Do we have any members of the news media out there?
No.
Okay, well, this is just us. I
think you have board members. You have board members present, and then there's someone present here.
Mr. Bolahan?
Mr. Bolahan is present here.
Okay, we have
And,
visitors and board members.
Dr. Richardson and Mr. Marks.
Outstanding. We're so glad to have them.
Okay.
Again, our purpose here today is to consider amending the Police Citizens Community Relations Advisory Council. And I would like to start off with a little overview, and then we can get into the ordinance itself. That was a shooting on the part of a police officer of a citizen in my district. And as a result of that shooting, that person passed. And not long after that, 1,000 citizens gathered at the New Shiloh Baptist Church to talk about citizens' relationship with the police. And the question was asked by the citizens, and how many of them agreed that there was a need for a change in the police citizens relationship. Everyone raised their hand saying that should be a change. All of them raised it. And Councilmember Bess Rich was in that meeting, and Council President Levon Manager was in that meeting. I don't know if CJ was there or not. But anyway, I left that meeting dedicated to the proposition that we need an ordinance whereby a committee can look into citizens' concerns and take those concerns to the police department and try and get them resolved. So I worked with our attorney to create the ordinance itself. And since the ordinance been in place and our committee established, we haven't made much progress. A lot of the members didn't fully participate. So this is a renewed effort, and I think before we commission them to go back again, we need to sort of figure out what went wrong and try and amend this ordinance. So they would be all fired up when they go back to serve on the committee. One thing I discovered in reading this ordinance is that you're going to see that we have 3 or 4 items that is required by these committees to do. One, they must ride with the police annually. One, they must attend a 6-hour orientation. Another one, they're gonna have to meet with the police chief quarterly. I couldn't find anything in this ordinance to say that these members must meet with the public. Not one line in here to say it's all about what they must do with the police. But it's nothing in the ordinance saying when, where, if they must meet with the citizens. I think we need to come back and change that, because this is a police citizens committee. And I think if they're going to be meeting with the police, they ought to be telling the police what they found out from the citizens. But if we're not requiring them to meet with the citizens, they're not going to have nothing to say to the police while they're riding with them or meeting with the chief. They're not going to have nothing to say. So I think as we look at this ordinance and look at things we need to amend, we need to put something definitively in this ordinance requiring members of this committee to meet with the citizens to find out how they feel about police-related matters. And as we go through this ordinance, I would like for us to focus on that. That's just my overview. We can get started. I think the first part of this of the ordinance is clear. I think until we get to section 1, I think it's clear how it was organized and all that. I think when we get to section 2, I think all of section 2 is stating it's about the citizens committee and the public, but it's not requiring them. So if we want to look at all of those, it said section 2 starts off saying that the advisory council shall have the following purpose: to promote and encourage open communication and cooperation between the police department and the citizens. I just think that is outstanding. But it didn't say, we're not going to say how they're going to do it, when they're going to do it, except when it comes to the police department. I think we need to figure out a way in this, or what we need to do to make this happen. I certainly agree that is true, but we're going to have to figure out how to make this happen.
Mr. Chairman,
Yes.
if I could, I realize and respect that I'm not a member of this particular committee, but I'm going to have to leave shortly in order to go to physical therapy. But I do want to just very briefly weigh in, if it be in order.
Yes, come on.
I concur with your sentiment. I think one of the things that made the last iteration of this commission disintegrate was the inability for those persons who were appointed to ever become cohesive and to ever work as a group. I went to 2 or 3 of those meetings, and there seemed to be 2 factions: a real pro-community faction and a real pro-police officer faction when what we needed was persons who had sensitivity and sensibility to look at both perspectives and
Right.
try to reach a consensus. I'm hopeful as we appoint people like Mr. Marks, Dr. Richardson, Ms. Weaver from my district, I'm hopeful that they'll be able to bridge that gap. I think the second greatest deficiency was we were not able to effectively connect the public with this group. They'd be having these meetings and absolutely nobody would show up. I had one over at, what's this Baptist church right there on Earl Street, Aimwell. And it was me, and I think Joel and Dr. Jackson and the committee members. And so I believe we're going to have to equip them with a city Facebook page or a city email, some kind of a effective and well publicized medium in which the public can let them know of issues in the community. We can't hide them under a rock and say that we've done this and then give them no way to illuminate their existence. And so I'm hopeful that we can come up with some official way, whether it's a Facebook page, working with Ms. Steinfels, a city email, a dedicated number that members of this commission can have access and be privy to, that's dedicated to them. Because in many communities, citizens are afraid to report because of retribution. But if we give them access to a number that's connected to this commission, where they can call in and relay their concerns, and then those concerns can be relayed to the public safety director and the police chief, I think we would have really solved a big semblance of a problem. We've got to give them the abilities to connect with the community in order to be successful. Absent that, we would have appointed 7 people and sent them on a wild goose chase. And so that pretty well sums up my take on it. Mr. Chairman, I support the idea. I'm hopeful that everybody will appoint somebody with an open mind that's not hunting down one agenda over another, other than the agenda of doing what's right by all parties involved.
Okay, in light of your statement, is it, since we are meeting on amending the ordinance, is it any amendment that you would like to recommend in that regard? Or do you just want us to be aware?
Well, I think if I had the opportunity, I think we need to put some tools. We need to codify in this ordinance some tools that this body will have in order to do their work. Be it a city Facebook page, be it a city telephone number, access to a telephone number, access to a city email, so that they can go off and create a Gmail or AOL mail or Hotmail or whatever. That's not legitimate. We need something that citizens can feel is actually going to be connected to the city under the city's umbrella. And I would be hopeful that the administration would work with this commission to set those conduits up so that people can have an official way to reach these citizens, an official way for them to announce that we're having committee meetings, even if city staff controls the page. That way the information can steadily be available to citizens out in the community. So I would like to see that in the ordinance to the extent that it's legal.
Okay, can committee members, do you all anybody want to weigh in on that?
I don't disagree. I think they ought to, last time they all wanted individual email, that's fine with me too. I just don't want to compartmentalize one member being the guy who takes all the debate and turns it the way they may want to. Not that anybody on this one would do that, but I would say that it absolutely must have every means of communicating. And
Right.
and an access from the public. And so I'm right with Levon on that. Some reason last time there was a resistance of the administration to have that. Without it, I think we end up the same place.
Okay, I think those are great recommendations. Why don't we just say, since we're
Mr. Chair,
here,
I'm just gonna say that I'm gonna have to leave, but this is a great work we're doing. I'm glad we're giving this a second shot, second chance. And I know my appointee is ready to move forward. And if not, I know Dr. Bolahan is ready to step in for her. And I think we need to, one last recommendation, we need a means in which we can remove appointees if they don't want to subscribe to the tenets of the ordinance.
it's
because
already
that
in
was a-
here.
Okay, good.
Any council member can remove any member at any time. It's already in the ordinance.
Their member.
Right.
Yeah, they can remove their member. Right.
Okay.
That's right.
Leave.
Okay. So since we're here to look at amending the ordinance, why don't we go to turn it over to you all, whoever, if you all have some recommendations regarding amending the ordinance, let's come forward with it and see what it is.
Yeah. I would just say that since I first read the ordinance and we were back where we were, I've had a kind of a change in a sense that, you know, if my appointee, Mr. Richardson, doesn't want to ride with the police in the car, I don't think he needs to ride with the police. I think it helps him to do his job better. I don't think he ought to have to sit through a 6-hour orientation on what the police do.
I don't either.
And I will let my appointee, as he is quite able, talk about that. But I feel like this needs to be a citizen that cares about citizens and the safety of our community and is willing to work with the police to make sure that happens. And all these arbitrary things we put on there, a number of hours here, a number of hours there. In order to do their job, they need to meet with the citizens. In order to do their job, they have to have access to somebody of authority in the administration. And that may or may not be the police chief. But that's the kind of, I think that they need to meet.
That was a drawback. That was a drawback.
Yeah, I agree. That's all I got to say on this. I'm going to be happy with where this committee goes, because I think that we've appointed some great members. I think they'll come back to us and tell us what we need to do specifically to give them the ability. I'm certainly confident that that Dr. Richardson is going to do that for me.
Thank you, Councilman Williams. I appreciate the appointment. I appreciate all you kind council folks and other members of the citizenry for gathering together. And I'm grateful that I was able to participate in this meeting today. I'm prepared to do whatever it takes to accomplish the mission. I first would say that I've never seen the ordinance, and I'd certainly, if it's possible, maybe Ms. Lambert can direct that to my attention. I'd like to, before we review the current ordinance and come up with a new ordinance, I'd like to at least know what the old ordinance said. Beyond that, as we entered into the room, I'm not necessarily certain if I've actually heard clearly delineated what precisely is the mission of this particular board and what objectives or any that it is that you would task us with achieving. Certainly, I support everything I've heard so far in terms of engagement with the citizenry, reporting to them, things of that sort. And I guess I'll stop by simply saying this, that the genesis by which I come to this place and this conversation and this opportunity is kind of immersed in a lot of the social unrest that precipitated the city council calling for the meeting. That being said, I'm grateful to live in a city where there was some degree of responsiveness on the part of city leadership to address this concern. So that too is a good thing. And I guess before I talk much about changes, I need to know where we are presently. So if I give you a copy of that current ordinance, as we make modifications to it, that might be helpful.
I texted it to you, Doc.
Oh, thanks. Okay, I see it already. Thank you.
Okay, I'll just make this statement that according to the ordinance of the purpose of this committee is to promote community confidence in the police department and law enforcement officers. The citizens said they didn't have any confidence, and this committee ought to be promoting confidence in the police department and the law enforcement officers. So how they going to do this? It's up for us to say if we want to change the ordinance to state specifically one thing. I think we ought to do is require them to meet inside these neighborhoods on set frequency, not to just tell them this, that, and the other, but we don't say that they have to meet. I believe they're going to need to have to meet at least quarterly inside these communities, inside these council districts.
Yeah, I think that I'm going to leave that up to my appointee, and what he comes back and lets me know is his prerogative. Because they're going to figure it out. I'm confident they're going to figure it out, and they'll tell us. Because sometimes a quarterly meeting may not be necessary, and I don't want to be in violation of an ordinance when they've been receiving Facebook or telephone calls, emails, and they feel like they're communicating fairly well without going to a location. And I've got to plug in real quick. I'm just going to go grab my charger.
Okay.
Fred.
Yes, Joe.
Fred.
Is it who?
Me.
Oh, it's Gina. Okay, come on, Gina.
Yeah, Fred, I think the last time when we had the council, they pretty much set their schedule and they did go into communities. I don't know if it was like a specific once a quarter or exactly how they handled it, but I know they tried to go to different districts and meet, put the word out so that people could come. And I think going into the districts is the way to do it, not having the advisory council try to meet on the 9th floor of Government Plaza. That's not going to work for everybody. But whether we should say specifically they must meet once a quarter, I think is going to make it difficult for the council to do their jobs.
The only thing I'm saying to that, Gina, is we are telling them that they got to meet with the police chief every quarter. We are telling them they must ride with the police. We're telling them they must attend a 6 hour. On the police side, we're telling them what they must do. I think we need to back off all of that and said they should. We need to take must out and add should in there. We're not to be mandating them to do that. We have mandated them to even meet with the public, but yet we're mandating them to do all these things with the police department. So I think, but it's up to the council.
Well, we could say they meet quarterly in districts, but give them the opportunity if something happens, if they don't have a quorum or something that happens and they can't meet quarterly, to make that change. Like the council is supposed to meet so many times a year, but that sort of thing. Maybe it's better to make sure that there's some sort of a mandate for how often they meet, so that they don't go in thinking that there's never going to be a meeting.
Yes, Joel.
I don't have any objection to setting out an expectation of how often the council would meet and that they would rotate. Maybe they meet no less often than once every 2 months, and they rotate around the different districts, something like that. I have no objection to that. Y'all will recall that when we passed the original ordinance, I was one of the supporters of having the mandated ride around and the police familiarization. We all know what it's like to be citizens. we don't know what it's like to be a police officer. And I think if you're going to be responsible for building a relationship between the citizens and the police officers, you need to know what it's like to be a police officer. Now, I've had this discussion with another member of the council, and I believe that member was behind this latest draft amendment that we got from Mr. Arledge, which y'all got today, which kept those requirements right around the orientation education, but also included a requirement that that each appointee no less often than annually attend and complete either in person or online a 1-hour cultural awareness sensitivity seminar or training program. And I'm fine with that. But those components are really important to me. And I think in order to make sure that we have people who are even-handed and who know what it's like to be a citizen and have some idea what it's like to be a police officer, we're much better likely to have people on the council who are going to be capable of building these relationships between the police and the citizens, which is the key component of this council.
Joe, I'm not in opposition to none of that, except I would say should. I don't think we ought to mandate. We're not paying them a dime. They're volunteering their time. We ought not to mandate these citizens to do that. We ought to say you should do that, not must do that.
Well, if we do that, we're going to have the people who want to do it, and the people who don't,
Right.
don't do it.
They volunteer.
It's my appointee. I think we got to, Mr. Marks, if you want to go to the.
Come on, Mr. Mark.
Good afternoon, everyone. How y'all doing? I first want to say it's an honor to be a part of this board, and I really appreciate this opportunity. Second of all, I do want to bring some notion and let you guys know that me personally, I've worked with the Mobile County's Police Department. I've worked with the Sheriff Department. I've served as a parent advisor for both through my kids, and also I'm a veteran, military veteran. So I'm very familiar with how the police operate. I have family members that are current on the force. Like I say, and Chief Batista and I have a long relationship as far as trying to find ways within the community to cater to the needs of the citizens. Him and I met many years ago, probably 13, 14 years ago through my mentoring. So I'm very familiar, just to give you some comfort on how the police department, operates. And so I'm not just bringing my experience as a citizen, but I'm also bringing my experience from the military, and also my experience from just working with the police department and the sheriff department in general. I would also like to say that one of my main concerns with this board, I'm grateful, like I said, that our city is building these resources and trying to make a difference in our community. However, I don't want this board to be a pacifier. I don't want it to serve as, just something on paper. I really want us to try to find ways to mend some of these things, some of these problems that's in our community, because we are dealing with citizens that are truly hurting. And there's real issues out there, like Councilman Richardson said yesterday. We had a shooting in his district, and the citizens have lost trust in the police department, and we have to find ways to gain that trust back. And I feel like with the members that's a part of this committee, that we have a great team and we can do that. But we definitely are ready to get to work. And I think if we put too many things in front of us, it's going to prevent us from getting to work and solving these things that we need to jump on, in a fast and appropriate manner.
Thank you, Mr. Marcus. Let me say that my appointee is Ms. Vanessa Wright. Ms. Vanessa Wright is a retired police lieutenant from the Montgomery Police Department. She did over 20 years. She was a military police officer in the military. So, you know, to tell her we want you to ride with the police and, you know, learn all that, she already know. She's a retired police officer. But yet we're requiring her sit up in a course and to ride. She's a retired police officer. She understands the role of the police. That's why I said we ought to say must. And listen to Mr. Marks, he's pretty much saying the same thing. Yet he understands. You know, it ain't gonna broaden his scope of a police officer because he has a deep appreciation for them. He doesn't need to do all of that. So I say the thing, we ought to at least take that must out and say it should. That's just my feeling. Okay, so we I know we have Mr. Jabolahan is outside there, and the city clerk has notified me that he wished to speak. I said we let him speak. We've heard from 2 board members. Madam Clerk,
Yes,
can you put Mr. Jabolahan on?
he's here.
Can you let him speak?
Okay, go ahead.
Yes, peace and blessing, council. I have official history of working with the police as well as unofficial. I served on the FBI Community Relations Committee, Culture Enrichment Committee, Intercity Committee with Kenyon Brown. I also worked with Police Chief Johnson when he was here, as well as Cochran, as well as all the rest of the police here in the city. I also served with the FBI, the FBI Multicultural Task Force. I was listening at the discussion that we've been having and talking about empowering citizens to be actually a bridge to kind of deal with that trust issue or the lack of trust that's there. Now, we all recognize that police have a very difficult job, and basically that's why we train them in such a way that they can handle this job. They can handle this job not out of fear, not out of blue culture, but out of the training they receive, so that would show the citizens that everybody respects the law and the law is applicable to everyone. You cannot have a safe community unless you build trust. You won't be able to police this community without trust that the citizen participating with you. And when the community feel like they care more about the blue culture than they care about the Constitution, then actually that won't be trust. When Michael Moore was killed here in Mobile, I also was working with the police department, had worked with Michael Donald family and Chickasaw boycott and history for many years. But I had a meeting with the chief 2 or 3 times, and I tried to get some information on the complaints and where was the complaints coming from, what district, what police district it was coming from, what precinct it was coming from. I could not get that information. Last time I was here, I asked a question about could a police who behaved improperly in another jurisdiction, could he come here and get a job as well? I did not get an answer to that question. Could he come here also and get a job even though he messed up in another jurisdiction? When the police brought the tape about the Michael Moore killing to us, I was serving on that committee. I asked to see the beginning of the tape, not just the section they wanted me to see, but I wanted to see the whole tape so I can see just what transpired before the section they pulled out they wanted me to see. I never was able to get that information. And so if you're actually gonna set up a committee, you're gonna have to empower them with information so they can have some clarity. They was asking me to, when Michael Moore was killed here, the grand jury indictment was sealed. The FBI investigated, they send their report over to the Justice Department. The community didn't get any of their questions answered concerning the discrepancies. Why would 10 police to show up, a professional police to show up at a scene where they say that a person had a gun and that was the reason why the person died, and nobody inquired about where the gun was? Not making any accusations because I don't have that information, but the community wanted to understand no one looked for the gun at the time when the police came on the scene. Now, and so when the grand jury sealed the proceedings, we couldn't get any answers. When the FBI investigated, they turned theirs over to the Justice Department. So now they come to us and ask us to go back to the community and explain to the community that they did their job properly. Now, how could I possibly go back to any community, and I'm just as ignorant as I was as they are. So if you don't make some kind of avenues available where they can get information, because I'm here in the city council. The last time I asked them about 10 police be hired in this jurisdiction if they messed up in another jurisdiction, I couldn't even get an answer. And I still don't have an answer. I can't get an answer on anything about which precinct that these complaints against the police was filed from. I cannot get an answer. How can this committee operate that you are setting up if they don't have any power to get any information?
Okay, let me chime in right there. When you all start your meetings, and if issues comes up that you need more information on, contact the Mobile City Council. I'm chairman of the Public Safety Committee. If it's necessary, I will convene a Public Safety Committee and request that information. If they refuse it, then I have our attorney to subpoena, issue a subpoena.
But Councilman, I do.
You gotta hear me out, hold on. You are being appointed by the Mobile City Council. You can't go beyond where we can't go. You've been appointed by us. You can't travel the roads that we can't go down ourselves. So whatever, from time to time, you are gonna need more information. All you got to do is let us know what information you need. We will take the proper steps to provide you the information you need. That's all that, in terms of this committee that you're on now. I don't know nothing about the Michael Moore thing. I don't know what happened with all of that. I didn't get the information I was looking for either. But I'm saying this, in terms of what this committee is assigned to do, you can get whatever information that is valid and legal. You can get it by requesting the information to the council. The idea that that we're gonna punch you on a committee that is powerless, no. We got the power that you need. Your power is coming through who appointed you.
Okay,
You're not gonna have more power than me and I appointed you. Your power is coming through us. So what you have to do is make a request to us for the information that you need. We'll take the appropriate steps to assure that you all get the information you need to carry out your duties and responsibility.
Yes, sir, Councilman. I just wanted to make sure that component is a part of what y'all setting up, because that is very important. I'm no longer serving on any of these committees, and the reason why, because I asked the kind of questions that I just asked you. So they decided that since I asked too many questions, not making any accusations, because I don't have any information to make any accusations, but I think I have a responsibility, if you put me on a committee, to try to get the necessary information that's necessary to build the bridges for the community to feel that they have some confidence in the police department that's operating in their community. So I'm just saying, not getting beyond the city council, but you're gonna have to empower them with information. And so if they know that you can provide the kind of information to let them know where these the way these infractions are taking place, the way the problems are taking
We can
place?
find out.
When the can police come from other jurisdictions and be hired here? And so if you can't find out that, now I ask you one question, Councilman, then I'm through. When the police do commit an infraction here, is there any, depending upon the nature of the infraction, is there any other policy that can make that police reliable, responsible for that action? Because it seems like only thing they do, they get a vacation. They get a vacation for 2 or 3 weeks or a desk job.
We don't
But
set that.
that's all that happens.
Those are administrative matters. We can't interfere. We can't tell the mayor that's not good enough. You got to suspend him. We can't get involved in any of that. As a matter of fact, it is a removable offense. I can be removed from my city council office for giving directives to the mayor.
But how can citizens file any kind of affidavit to make sure that that particular person do not be able to operate while he up under investigation?
I'm saying if the police department doesn't take any action against him, then whoever he committed the infraction against have to take the action. For instance, if he slapped me, then I can go to court, but that's beyond anything we can do.
Hey, Fred.
Yes.
First of all, has the gentleman, and I'm sorry, I didn't catch your name, have you been appointed to the advisory council?
Not just one. I was appointed by the chief of police to be on the one with the police department. I was appointed by Kenyon Brown to operate with him, and I was appointed by the FBI to
I
operate.
appreciate that. I was just curious as to whether you had been appointed to this advisory council or not. I hate to cut you off, but we are looking at whether or not to amend the
Right.
current ordinance, and I think we need to get back on that if we could, not going through the past history and any specific questions that this gentleman has would be better suited to go to the advisory council rather than trying to debate among us, what he would like to try to find out in the future. And I'm sorry to cut you off, but I don't think we'll ever get finished with today's meeting if we don't try to move forward a little bit. I have a couple of things, Fred, if you don't mind, since I haven't
Yeah.
really an opportunity.
Okay.
I agree with a lot that's been said. I don't believe this advisory council should be a pacifier. That's not what it's set up to be. It does need to be a bridge between citizens and the police department. And in that vein, there has to be a relationship. You can't be a bridge, you can't build a bridge if there are not relationships on both sides. I don't know where we'll land on requiring ride-alongs, should require them, should do them or require them to be done. I think if you're going to understand each other, I think it is a good idea to understand better what a police officer goes through on a daily basis, just as they need to better understand what it's like for people in these communities who are hurting. And how do we best do that? That's, still kind of up in the air. The spirit of working together is very, very important. That's what that bridge is. And I hope we can get the ordinance to a place where it needs to be. I think if we are going to be successful, this group does need to be proactive. But I think the group also has to agree to build a relationship. No matter if you have worked with police in the past, in a different city, whatever it is, we've got a new group on the streets today, and we need to have that relationship with the police today in order to work together to build that bridge and to take care of the citizens who feel like they have been left out, or as some people have said, they are hurting because they don't feel like they are being treated equally, and that there are issues that need to be resolved. So again, I hope that we can be proactive in this and decide whether or not the language of the original ordinance needs to stay or if it should be amended.
Thank you. Thank you very much. In that
But at the
regard,
same time, I just want to make sure that nobody is under the impression that having this police citizen advisory council, that this council becomes strictly a complaint taker. That's not what they're designed to be. It's not just a place where you just come issue complaints and that's all they do all day long. It is a group to hear problems and to resolve issues, and from both sides. I mean, as we know that there are multiple sides to any issue and they need to hear it all.
If I could comment?
Yes, Ms. Rich.
Thank you. I know I'm not a committee member. This took a lot of debate to even get it to its initial component, which because of the mentality of members, it just never really took off. And I think there was some problems with them not having a forum for getting the word out of where they were meeting, even though I think Marion did try. But I like the idea of having a page for them and contact information, and that it's something that people can feel comfortable with. But I will echo the sentiments of Councilwoman Gregory in that we need people on this committee that have to understand from the perspective of both sides of the equation. And some of that means that when they're working with someone who in our community who has a problem or has an incident or an experience, they might be able to recommend, because they are familiar with the kind of programs our police department have. I know it was very enlightening to me when I sat in on some of the programs that Chief Batiste already has in the community, like his Second Chance, and there's some really good things going on. I would not be particularly upset about seeing some of the, I guess, asking them to participate with a ride along, or maybe not as many hours. But if we don't have the police working with this committee, there's no communication going on. And then it becomes just like a gripe session with no resolve. And the whole idea is try to resolve these problems, get out in the open where people are concerned about or lack the trust. So it's got to really be a joint effort, and the communication between our police department and the mayor has an appointment, if I recall. I think that's
He
one
has
of the
one.
appointments. So that means the administrative end of things. But I really see the value in having an appointment who is open-minded, number one, to understand and be sensitive to the problems that exist in the community, the willingness to try to resolve them, or at least get them enlightened. And but knowing what the police are charged with doing, what their parameters are, and we talked about, there was a real push last time to have what was it, subpoena power, and we were quickly told that's something the council can have, but we
Right.
cannot give that to a citizen. We get it when we
No.
take an oath of office. And it's not even one council person can subpoena. It has to be a vote of the council. And so 5 members have to also agree for subpoena. And that's like a nuclear, but it is an option. It does exist. And but I really think that we can look at some of the time that people have to spend being wired up, so to speak, and sensitivity training. I don't think we had that in last one. Would be helpful so that people understand why people are concerned or what their disconnect is from the police in our community. And that's serious business. And so but I do think there should be something that every member needs to participate in that aligns them with an understanding of what the police can and cannot do, and what their authority really is all about. So I think that's part of the problems that we have with people who have very bad experiences. And I'm going to just mute myself now. But thanks.
All right, Joel.
Yeah, I just want to piggyback on what both Bess and Gina said. The real value of this commission is in building bridges and working with the communities, with communities and police that serve these communities, to build better relationships and trust. between the communities and the police department. The city council doesn't have any authority to tell the mayor to fire a police officer. And really the mayor has very limited authority because that's all in the hands of the county personnel board. So really it's important that this committee be a sounding board and be out in the communities, as Fred has mentioned, out in the communities, in the neighborhoods, helping to build relationships between the police and the communities they serve. Thank you.
Thank you, Jordan. Let me say this, that we have approximately 500 police officers. And maybe these citizens would get a chance to ride with one. And that one officer is not going to change the attitude of the 499 police officers. And he can't make no change. When they get through riding and talking with him, that officer can't make any changes within the police department. But they're required to meet with the police chief and his staff who can make these changes. That's what's crucial. When you get through riding with this officer, with the ride along, it's one officer. It's 499 more out there. And he can't make no changes. He can't, nothing he can do but ride with him. But the police chief and his staff, when they meet with him and go over the issues that they picked up on while inside the community, that's when the change is going to be made. The change is not going to be made inside a police car. That's why I say, let it be volunteer. I don't think we're going to help anything for one police officer who can't make no changes, who can't change nothing, for them to ride along with him. I think that's a good idea. I think it ought to be not mandatory, because if it ought to be mandatory, if as a result of that, it was going to produce all of this over here, it can't, because the officer can't do nothing. He can't make no changes. He can't make no recommendations. But meeting with the police chief, now you face to face with somebody who can make some cultural changes in the police department. But riding over here with him, he can't make no changes. He can ride you. That's all he could do. So I'll say to think we need not to discourage these. First of all, the two persons here, almost all of the people who came to us, they've already had a relationship with the police department. They already worked with them. They know. I'm saying you might have 2 or 3 that may not have done that, but we have people who it's not going to help them for us to require them to ride with the police department, because they've been a police, they've been associated with police, they've been working with the police, they understand it, and I don't see where it's so. I think that part of it ought to be changed, but it's up to us to say whether or not we want to do that.
Mr. Chairman?
Yes.
Yeah, I would like to say, I know not on the committee, and I realize that some of the participants have probably had experience in the police department, but the thing about it is that we don't police the same way as we did 20 years ago. You don't really police the same way as you did 10 years ago. The society has changed, and policemen, how you police has changed over the last, probably the last 6 months, since the George Floyd incident. I think it would be a good idea that the people that we select to serve on these committees do ride out with at least a supervisor, or not just a common person that started, but with a supervisor, so they can see exactly what the officers are facing today. Again, the same thing that's going on now is not what went on 5 years ago. The policemen that, the different actions that happened 6 years ago is not going on today. Our cops are facing different, dealing with different people than they was 5 years ago. Especially, we had a lot of more mental illness people walking our streets every day. And that's not was the case 20 years ago. 20 years ago, we had searches up in Mount Vernon. We don't have that no more. our search today is streets. And many people don't realize how many actually sick people are walking our streets every day, and how many of our officers have to deal with these people that walk in our streets every day that's affecting our community. And again, I really do believe that the participants should know exactly where the cops are coming from, just as well as the citizens, where they're coming from. The participants that we are getting for this this committee, they of course they know what the stand view of majority of the public. But what about the police, Again, it's supposed to be bridging the gap, between the public and the police department. But the person that bridging the gap have to see exactly where the eyes are from the public and actually see from the police department. Again, what the police department is experiencing today is not what they experienced 8 months ago. How much has changed since the George Floyd incident? Thank you.
Mr.
Okay.
Chairman, may I chime in? Because
Yes.
I'm starting to hear that you all are saying the same thing. I would defer to Councilman Williams in regards to my approach, whether it's litigation, chemical analysis, process orientation, anything, is always to at least start off with the least restrictive mechanism to get started. You've assembled this team. You guys have identified individuals. You've issued us a proclamation that indicates what the current rules of engagement are, if in fact it's going to be modified and changed over a period of time. I would simply say at this stage in the game, I'm absolutely confident that the other individuals, Mr. Marks and the other people that have been assembled here today, we can get together. We can provide you feedback about what we think is important relative to that. I'm not going to disagree with Mr. Marks or anyone else about riding along with police officers. I did it with the first class they had with the county commission. They've had classes with the city to learn about public works and the police department and the fire department, the parks and recreation. I've done all of those things, and I'm not averse to doing them again. But I would simply say, I would side with what Mr. Williams said. Let us do what we got to do. We'll come back. We'll review the current documentation. We'll make recommendations about how to move forward. And given the fact that we are the genesis in terms of the rekindling of this particular activity, allow us, since we're already dedicated, committed, and willing to make the sacrifice in time, energy, and talent to persevere and push through this, allow us to be what you want us to be. Allow us to be the ones to come forward and say, hey, we think that, yeah, no company's going to put you on board at any place in terms of your onboarding process without some kind of orientation. What does that orientation look like? I think all of you are saying the same thing. I don't see any reason to continue to beat it over and over again. What does it look like? Allow us the opportunity to come together, explore, discuss, and understand, come back to you guys and tell you what we think is the best onboarding process, not just for the group that's starting out at this moment in time, but whoever's to come after us. Aside from the amendment of this particular document that I just received, we can do all of that. I just simply would say at this stage of the game, let's take the least restrictive approach. Let's give people that are making a commitment and willingness to serve their community in whatever capacity is identified and deemed by you guys appointed to do what it is that we've got to do. The only issue that we've kind of danced around that we haven't gone headstrong into, that Mr. Balaji tried to address, and in some ways CJ tried to address, and many of you have tried to address, the problem with civil rights and race relations as it's existed for the last 20 to 50 years is people always talk about building bridges, but nobody ever crosses the bridge to break bread with the person on the other side of the bridge, okay? So if in fact we're gonna talk about this as a bridge building exercise, and we're gonna try to develop some level of understanding about what the police are going through, and thereby also afford them an opportunity to understand what the community is going through, all of that's wonderful. At some stage in the game, whether it's a quarterly meeting with leadership, whether it's from the administration, the police department, the director of public safety, whoever it may be, there's got to be a mechanism in place, which I think we can put together, that identifies where we heard the problem, how to address the problem, and when it needs to be communicated. Because those problems are going to be dependent upon the level of severity. I mean, if you have a mass shooting, it's going to be different than somebody snatching grandma's pocketbook at Walmart. And I think you got responsible people that you've identified to be able to do this. Allow us the opportunity to come together as quickly as possible and begin to strategize, build those relationships amongst ourselves without you necessarily issuing us an edict about how we should perform and when we should get together and who we should get together with. Allow us to help you build that.
Let me just say this before I call on Mr. Marks. We're dealing with the law. It's ordinance, it's the law. and the issue is whether or not we ought to change the law and leave it alone to make it less if it says that you must do this and must do that, that's what you are required to do. To make it less restricted is to say you should, and that you all come back and tell us how that is working. You got an open hand to go out there and talk with the sisters and all that, but some things you don't have no freedom. Not you don't have the luxury of not doing. And I have read those things. We're not saying the same thing, because when it comes down to what the things that you must do, it's not optional. Those things are not optional. And what we're trying to say, I'm trying to reach consensus with the council on is whether or not we still want to go down that path, or we want to amend that to say those are some things that you all should do rather than must do. That's where we are.
And I guess I appreciate that, Councilman Richardson and Mr. Chairman. I just think that the revision process that you want to undertake, we may not be able to accomplish that today. And I think, somehow or another, we've got to find a way to get to that. I'm agreeing with you. I'd like it to say should you also. I would like it not to say must, but it currently says must. So
But
you
we-
guys are the ones that are going to be the ones to determine how to make it say something different.
We'll find out in a minute. Mr. Mark,
Okay.
Mr. Mark.
Yes, sir. I want to say this, and I want to be very clear. I have absolutely no problem with riding along with an officer whatsoever. My only concern with that is, I agree with you. We've done this before. I know it's different, and the atmosphere has changed, and I agree. And if that's something that that will satisfy some people, and for us to move forward, then let's do it and get it over with. I just don't want to hold up valuable time that could be used on getting some action done and get some things in place for the community. Because we can sit up all day long and say, okay, we need to do this, we need to do that. Well, at the same time, there's things that's happening in our community that can change the entire atmosphere at a moment's notice. And so I just feel like the more we drag this thing out, that it's going to kind of prolong us getting to work. Like I said, I have no problem with riding along with an officer, but I agree, riding with that one officer, or whether it's a supervisor or whatever, is not going to change the mindset of that particular officer potentially. If you can't affect the masses, you're gonna have to be able to find a way to bridge the gap between all of us, and so we all can work together and better our community. And that's what this board is about. We're trying to find ways to better our community. And we have no problem with riding along with the officer, but we don't want to waste valuable time. And that's pretty much where I'm at on this. And I feel like that we do have the right people on the board that have some experience, and we have some knowledge to where we do can understand both sides, the community because we live in the community, and the officers because we have experience with the officers. But at the same time, we don't want to drag this out and waste valuable time. And that's kind of where I'm at on this. Like I said, I have no problem with riding with the officers or whatever we need to do to get this board established. My thing is just get it done in a timely manner.
All right, thank you. John, you want to say something? You move your hand. Okay. We're coming to the end. I think we ought to say, I think we ought to have something to say if we regarding this committee meeting with the community. As it stands now, there is nothing in the ordinance saying when. I think we ought to have something in there. We left that up to the committee. We didn't get nowhere. I think we ought to have something. We ought to amend the ordinance to address that situation of them meeting with the community. Whether it's quarterly, we ought to say something.
Again, I would like to simply let these guys run for 90 days and let them come back and say, you know, this is how often we ought to meet. We've talked to all the members, and we got more than a capable board here. And if we just, let's let them run for 90 days and let's reconvene this R60, and let them come back to us and say, we need the ability to meet this many times. We need the ability to meet with the police chief, with the community, and they can
No,
outline.
that's in there.
Say again?
That's in there. They got the power. They got the power to meet with the police chief.
Well, sort of. They need to get together. We got some great minds here, as evident by the two that are on the screen today, that if we'll listen to them, if we'll let them run for a little while and then listen to them, I think we're going to get a much better ordinance that they can work with and that they can work within.
I have a question, if I could.
Yeah.
Chairman? Okay,
Okay.
thanks. I haven't made the appointment because normally I like to submit to the person, even if they've expressed an interest or I've reached out to them, what their responsibility would be. And so, you know, if they're going to be asked to meet quarterly, that's a lot different than monthly. And maybe they need to meet monthly. I don't know. So I would rather see the group that's come together so far and have this broad approach to policing and community issues to give us ideas on how the ordinance should read, so that we take their advice and their expertise. I really, when I make an appointment, I really think it is a huge commitment for somebody. They don't take it lightly, and they need to know what their responsibility will be. You know, I could say you could join, but then it might not be the right fit because I don't even know exactly, you know, what is going to be the responsibility. I understand that it's to make a bridge, but when I hear things like people say that all the time, and I sense that too, and it's a lot of rhetoric, but it's time to put it into action. And so I want to point the right person, and I don't, you know, I would like to know exactly what's their commitment will be so that it's a really fine appointment and is the right fit.
Question. Brad?
Yes. Yes.
Since we have an ordinance already, there is a current ordinance. Would it be something that everybody would agree to, that the 5 who we have already appointed could begin meeting under the current ordinance and see maybe what changes could be made down the road? Is that what I'm hearing from some folks? Because as Mr. Marks has said,
I ain't got nothing against.
the longer we draw this out, the longer it's going to take them to be able to start meeting. And, you know, we all agreed way back in the day that this current ordinance was good. So maybe in order to get going, we could get going.
I'm not.
I'm in Ms. Rich's camp, but I'm absolutely 100% behind the 5 that are appointed to go ahead and start meeting.
Okay. So, committee, Jenny John, I think we have discussed, we're not gonna get no more out of this. Do y'all think we need to just let this go and leave everything as is? Let the committee come back to us and tell us anything they think we need to change? Is that how y'all see it?
Because, you know, we may not make any change. We may decide that the current ordinance is the one to operate under. And maybe, you know, Joel and Bess could go ahead and appoint somebody, understanding that you're using the current ordinance. But, you know, as time goes on, we could come back and relook at it. I mean, there's always that option, especially once, you know, our group gets going, and they will, I'm sure, give us some input that we will need to consider.
I'm fine. I'm fine with that.
Okay. So Ms. Marks, do you have something to say that's going
I just would like to say that I would like a copy of the current ordinance. I haven't seen it to be able to review it because I would like to know what I'm working under.
Oh, yes, shoot. Okay. We'll have the city clerk. Do you have a pen?
Yeah, I just,
208-7411.
I'll
And
send it to
tell
him.
them-
Rick. I'll send it to him.
Okay, CJ will send it to you. Okay, you got it going. Okay, so can we close out by saying that we've had a discussion on the matter and we decided not to change anything today. Let the new council start meeting on its own, and if it's anything they think we need to change, let them come to us.
The only other thing I would add, Mr. Chairman, would be if you could share with us the names, contact information of the other members of this board
Oh, that's
so that
gonna
we can
happen.
start to formulate our relationship building.
Before we call a meeting, all of that is going to happen.
Okay.
All of that's going to happen.
Yeah, the clerk has all of that, Dr. Richardson, so she can get that out to everybody so that you all, the way we normally do it is the clerk will send out an email to everybody and ask for any dates that are more convenient for you all to get together for your first meeting and help set a place and time and all of that. And then y'all can get together and elect officers and then take over the meeting from there on.
Thank you.
Right. So is all council members clear, board members and all, that we're going to just leave everything as is?
right.
And then we're gonna let this group take it from there. And if anything else need to be done, let them come back to us.
Amen.
Can I get a motion to adjourn?
So moved.
All right. I'll consider this meeting over, adjourned.